My name is James, and today I'm going to talk about healing um, and really what happens when healing becomes a new mask. I mean, over the last 15 years, something significant happened in the cultural conversation about emotional health and the language of healing, of inner work, processing, integrating, interrogating, reflecting. And doing the work, it moved from the margins into the mainstream, and ever more so since the pandemic. People begin to talk more openly about therapy and trauma and mental health and about their emotional experiences in ways that no cultural precedent in generations before them had ever seen. And that shift represents something genuinely valuable. And that is the permission to have an interior life and to take it seriously, to invest in understanding it. I mean, and this is not a small thing, it matters greatly. But something else has happened alongside it. The healing became a performance. I mean, not for everyone. Some people have seen genuine transformation and freedom, but not everyone. Not even most people, honestly. But for a specific and significant subset of people in the personal development and personal growth and emotional health space, the journey toward healing became the primary identity. I mean, the person doing the work became the self that was most publicly presented. The vulnerability became curated, the growth became content, and the healing, which at its most genuine is private and often unglamorous, in this, with what is actually true, honestly. Here's how I want to say that. The healing became a social and sometimes commercial act organized around how it looks to others. So I want to be as clear and precise as possible without, sounding negative, because I'm not. I'm just expressing what I've seen and witnessed. And I want to be clear about what I'm describing, because this is the territory that is easy to misread in both directions. I'm not arguing against healing. Healing is real and it matters and it requires genuine work. I have healed in some areas of my life. I'm not arguing against vulnerability or the public sharing of personal experience. I believe that amplified life is a life lived in public, and I believe we ought to build and grow in public, but there is also boundaries with that. There is value in that when it's done well. What I'm describing is a specific dynamic in which the healing process has been captured by the same identity structure that produced the original wound, where the mask, which was created in response to pain or trauma, has simply found a new and more socially sophisticated performance to organize itself around. So the performance then is healing. And here's how to identify it. Genuine healing moves toward greater internal freedom and decreasing dependence on external validation for its continuation. The healing performance moves toward greater social visibility and increasing dependence on community recognition that the healing is happening. In genuine healing, the measure of progress is inside, interior, in the inner space. A quality of steadiness or clarity, groundedness that the person can feel in themselves. In the healing performance, the measure of progress is exterior. The testimony that landed, the post that got the likes, the person that felt like they were speaking to them and it resonated, the acknowledgement from the community that the growth is real. One is healing. The other is a new form of the approval seeking that the healing was supposed to address. So the healing performance has specific mechanics that are worth examining. And I mean, they're subtle, right? They're subtle enough that many people engaged in them don't recognize what they're doing, not because they're trying to be deceitful. They're not even deceived. They're not dishonest, but that the mechanics of the performance feel from inside them exactly like the mechanics of genuine healing. The emotions being expressed are real. The experiences being described are real. The desire for growth is real. What is not real is the relationship between the expression and the interior process. So The expression is happening primarily for the audience rather than in genuine service of the inner space movement. The first mechanic is the curated disclosure. This is the selection of, vulnerabilities, I guess, for public sharing that are significant enough to produce admiration for the person's honesty and courage, but not so raw or so current that they introduce genuine risk. The curated disclosure is always, in some sense, from the past. It describes something that has been processed enough to be talked about and narrated with a degree of coherence and resolution. And the narrative arc is almost always the same. Hey, I struggled with this. Man, this was really, really hard. I almost didn't make it. I did the work. Ta-da, I came through. Here's what I learned. That arc is useful to people who hear it, but it is not the same as genuine vulnerability. Genuine vulnerability is sharing something that has not yet been resolved, something where the outcome is not yet known, something that introduces real risk rather than managed risk. And that kind is almost never what appears in the healing performance, because the healing performance is organized around the management of perception, not the genuine encounter with what is true and real. The second mechanic is the language capture. And I'm big, for those of you who follow my teaching, you know I'm big on language and clarity. The healing performance develops an extremely fluent relationship with therapeutic and developmental language, the vocabulary of attachment theory, of nervous system regulation, of parts work, the inner child, somatic experience, trauma response. I mean, this language used accurately by people who have genuinely encountered what it describes is enormously valuable, okay? Used as a performance, it becomes a sophisticated system for sounding like someone who has done the work without necessarily doing the encounter the language is describing. And the fluency itself becomes a barrier, because a person who can talk about their trauma response with clinical precision can very easily mistake the talking for the processing. The map is not the territory, and the language of healing is not the same as healing. The third mechanic is the community dependency. The healing performance requires an audience. More specifically, it requires an audience that reflects back confirmation that the healing is happening and that the person is doing it, is admired for it. This audience is almost always found in communities organized around personal growth, emotional health, shared vulnerability, these things. And these communities at their best provide real and genuine support for the process. But they can also, without intention, create the conditions for the healing performance to continue indefinitely. Because the community needs the content requires ongoing disclosure. And ongoing disclosure, I'm trying to figure out how I really want to put this out here. To remain engaging must always be finding new material. And so the person in the healing performance is perpetually in process, perpetually growing, perpetually healing, perpetually not quite there yet, perpetually not free, almost but not quite. And that all the healing, that everything, that all the place, rather the finish line that the healing was supposed to lead toward, this is where we go, but not quite there, okay? Because the freedom in that mindset would end the performance, and without the performance, who are they in this community that has organized itself around their journey? That's why the amplified life, if you know anything about, I won't get into that, soapbox down. I want to describe now, let me focus on what genuine healing looks like. It's not glamorous, but the contrast is important. Okay, genuine healing is unglamorous. It is solitary. It does not produce content. It does not perform well. It involves encountering things that cannot be narrated immediately because the processing hasn't happened. It involves the specific discomfort of being in an experience before the language has arrived. It is slow in ways that are frustrating rather than meaningful, rather than having real good feeling. around them. It does not require an audience. In fact, at its most genuine, it often requires the absence of an audience. The measure of genuine healing is not what the person is able to share about the journey. It is the quality of their ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Are they less reactive? Are they more present? Is the gap between who they perform and who they are diminishing? Is the internal audit getting quieter? Do they require less external validation to maintain their sense of okayness? These are not questions that produce good content. They're questions that produce a life. And the distinction between these two things, producing good content and producing a life, is one of the defining questions of the current cultural movement around healing. And I'm not saying that sharing one's life journey is inherently a performance. I encourage it. Authentic sharing at the right time with genuine purpose and risk is a powerful act that can produce real connection and real service and blessing to others who are in similar places. The distinction that I'm drawing is between sharing that is in service of the interior process and sharing that has replaced it. One uses expression as a tool, the other uses expression as the point. And the person inside the process usually knows which one they're in, if they're willing to ask the question honestly. Healing that is genuine, another attribute about good and real healing, is that it goes somewhere. It does not go on forever. It arrives at a place eventually, at a quality of groundedness that is different from the quality of groundedness that ongoing processing produces. The processing phase produces insight, awareness. Healing that is real produces stability, structure. And stability, when it becomes the ground that a person stands on, never requires a maintenance. It does not require the next retreat, the next modality, the next therapy, the next community, the next affirmation. It's just there. It's quiet and reliable. The foundation from which actual life, presence, relationships, contributions are even possible. The person who has really healed is often less interesting to watch than a person who is performing healing, because genuine healing produces a quality of settled presence that does not generate a great deal of excitement. No content at all. The drama has reduced, the emotional volatility has reduced, the need for the community mirror has reduced, and what has taken its place is a person who is more available for a genuine encounter with other people, who has more energy for actual life, who is less organized around their own story and more available to be in the stories of others. That is not boring. It's what healing was supposed to produce the entire time. So if you've been in the healing space for a significant time, I want to invite an honest question. I don't want to produce shame about the journey. There's no room for shame. But I want to help you produce clarity about where you are in the journey. Is the healing going somewhere? Are the measures of genuine progress less reactivity? More presence? More internal audit, quietly, growing steadiness, actually moving? Or has the healing become a way of being that is sustainable indefinitely, precisely because it is not required to arrive anywhere? You ask that question, and that question asked honestly is one of the most useful questions available. And the answer to it is one of the most revealing things a person can encounter about the relationship between themselves and their identity, and the work they believe they are doing on it. Questions? Comments? I'd love to hear your thoughts. This is James Tippins. This is Unbound, Freedom for Life.